It's 2023 and it has never been a better time to get a new pair of football boots. We're almost spoiled for choice with how many great options there are on the market right now. So in this video, we're gonna break it down and do a tier list of the best football boots of 2023. We're gonna be ranking a total of 18 boots here from 4 different brands. Now just a quick preface here, these were just all the boots that I was able to try on this year, so there may be a few missing. In addition to that, this is gonna be just my opinion and yours may differ. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the tier list. All right, so the first boot on our tier list is going to be the classic Adidas Copa Mundial. So this is one of the best leather football boots you can get on the market. It's been that way for several decades now, but I do think it has some competition now. There's a lot of other leather boots that are actually at this price point or below it. So I think that the Copa Mundial is gonna actually land at just around the A tier for me. Maybe a couple decades ago, it would have been an S tier boot, but right now this boot costs about $160. And I just think there's other options that are also great below that price point. Next from Adidas, we have another amazing football boot, the Adidas Predator Accuracy 0.1. Now, in my opinion, this is probably the best football boot that Adidas offers right now. I've gone back and forth between this and a couple other models, but I just love the textured rubber elements. I think it kind of reminds me of older Predator models that came out when I was younger. So I think for the Accuracy 0.1, it's gonna be an S tier for me. Now, regarding the Accuracy Plus, this is also a great football boot, but same as the case with most laceless boots from Adidas, you do lose a decent amount of grip when you're running. There's a lot of slipping with the heel. And for me, the laceless boots from Adidas just haven't always been a great option. And I think that the Predator is a pretty loose fitting boot to begin with. It's pretty wide throughout the toe box, which I like, but I need the laces there to give me that lockdown around the ankle. So for me, the Predator Accuracy Plus is gonna be just below the 0.1 in the A tier. Still a great boot, and I like that with the laceless model, you do get more of those rubber elements. But moving on to the Adidas Copa Pure. So the Copa Pure replaced the Copa Sense, which is a football boot I wasn't a big fan of. Despite the fact it was leather, it had a really rigid upper, and I didn't find it that comfortable. The Copa Pure takes a completely different approach. The leather is a lot softer, it's more pliable, but this is a pretty slim fitting leather football boot. It fits almost like a speed boot. It actually has the sole plate of the Adidas Nemesis, which was a speed boot from several years ago. And for me, I prefer my leather football boots to have a little bit more of a roomy fit, more space throughout the toe box. So the Copa Pure, in my opinion, is a B tier football boot, but if you like a narrow fit, if you have narrow feet, then I think these are going to be a great option for you, especially if you want something that's really snug and tight. Now, moving on to the laceless version of the Copa Pure, the Copa Pure Plus, I actually think that this boot benefits from being really snug and tight. Because it's a laceless model, I think that the Copa Pure Plus gives you more lockdown than any other laceless boot that Adidas has. And for that reason, I actually think the Copa Pure Plus might be a better overall football boot. So I'm gonna put the Copa Pure Plus into the A tier there. Okay, moving on to our final boots from Adidas here. We have the X Speed Portal 0.1. So I was a big fan of the previous X football boot, and that was the X Speed Flow. That was one of the best speed boots that I think has ever been made, and it really gave the Mercurial Vapor 14 a run for its money. But I think that with the new Speed Portal, Adidas made a couple of decisions that I'm not a huge fan of. A month or two ago, they actually removed the Carbotex sole plate, which is, I think, one of the coolest pieces of tech on this football boot. And the upper is a little bit more rigid now than it used to be on the previous Speed Flow. If you're a player that wants a little bit more structure, you might appreciate that, but I think the boot loses some of its barefoot feel. So for me, the Speed Portal is probably gonna go in the B tier for the Speed Portal 0.1. And the Speed Portal Plus, I think that there's just too much slipping in the heel, and for a lightweight speed boot where responsiveness is everything, I just think that you don't really get that, in my opinion, from the Speed Portal Plus. So I'm gonna actually put that one below in the C tier. Okay, and that should cover all of the current football boots from Adidas. Moving on to Nike. So the first boot we have to discuss here is the Nike Premier 3, which is one of my favorite football boots. It's actually the current football boot that I'm playing in. It's an amazing leather option, and it's also a really affordable football boot as well. You can get this boot for just over $100. It retails for $110. And in my opinion, this is an A-tier leather football boot. And it's an A-tier football boot overall. It's really comfortable. I think it looks pretty modern and sleek. It's durable enough to last you a few seasons. And it's at a really fair price point. A lot of boots these days cost more than double than the Nike Premier. So I think A-tier is a pretty fair rating for that. Now, getting into higher end leather football boots from Nike, we have the Tiempo Legend 9. Now, this was my last football boot, and I absolutely love this boot. I love the Tiempo series overall. They've created some of my favorite football boots in the past as well. And I think this boot is a great combination of, function and aesthetic. I think it looks pretty sleek for a leather football boot. And also, it's a full leather upper, but it has some new tech as well. It has cushioned foam pods throughout the side. It has a really nice elasticated mesh tongue, has a pretty aggressive sole plate as well. For me, the Nike Tiempo Legend 9 is an S tier football boot. It's definitely going to be up there for me. Now, moving on to what I would say are the two most popular Nike football boots on this list, and probably the two most popular football boots on this list, period. We have the Mercurial Vapor 15 and the Mercurial Superfly 9. So there's no other way to put it. These are probably the best speed boots on the market. Nike have made some great innovations with this new model, going from the Vapor 14 to the Vapor 15. The addition of the air zoom unit and the sole plate was a really great idea. It provides a nice little springy feeling underfoot. The Flyknit upper coated in that Vaporposit material. It's grippy, but not too grippy. And on top of that, although it's a really snug fit for a speed boot, I still find there's a little bit of space in the toe box. So even as a wide-footed player myself, I don't actually find them too uncomfortable. Overall, these boots, they've made a name for themselves, and I think it's for a reason. And so both the Vapor 15 and the Superfly 9, I'm going to put them in the S tier. Next, our final boots from Nike here, we have the Phantom GX and then the Phantom GX Dynamic Fit variation, or the DF model. So these are really cool football boots. I last got to try on the Phantom GX just a few weeks ago, and the grip knit upper is really something unique. It's different to anything I've felt on a football boot before. I think there's a lot of innovative tech going on in this boot. I think they fit pretty comfortably as well. My one gripe I have is that, similar to the previous Phantom GT2, I think they're a little bit narrow in the toe box, but if that fits your foot shape and it works for you, then they could be a great option. For me, both the GX and the DF, I'm gonna put them in the A tier. Great football boots, and I think they are a step up from the previous Phantom GT series. Moving on from Nike, we now have Puma, starting with the Puma Future Ultimate. In my opinion, this is probably going to be the most versatile boot that Puma has. I really like the mesh upper. It's really forgiving, it's really stretchy. So, whether you have a narrow foot shape or a wider foot shape, it's probably going to be a good fit for you. Also, this is a pretty versatile football boot because you can wear it with laces or without laces. It's so snug that you actually get pretty good lockdown if you decide to wear it as a laceless football boot. For me, this is probably one of Puma's best boots right now, and I would give it an A tier. Now, moving on to the Puma Ultra Ultimate. This is one of the lightest football boots on this list, not quite the lightest, but on feet, it's extremely minimal. If you ever see this boot in person, you can feel the upper, it's razor thin, almost paper thin. And it can feel, it's almost like a novelty on feet, just how light they are. But there's consequences to having a football boot that's that light. If you've watched the Premier League this season, I mean, I've seen at least, I think on 2 separate occasions, players wearing the Puma Ultra, they get stepped on and their boot literally gets ripped off their feet. I don't mind minimal and barefoot boots, but I think there is something to be said about build quality and construction. And I think that these boots, they're just not quite substantial enough for me. And I also think that the previous iteration was slightly more comfortable as well. That was the Puma Ultra 1.4. So for me, the Puma Ultra Ultimate is going to be a B tier boot. It's a solid speed boot, and if you're looking for something really minimal, it might be a great option. Okay, now after completing our series of Puma boots there, we have our final category, and that is going to be New Balance. So you may be surprised as I rank these, especially if you haven't tried on any of the New Balance boots before, because I do think that these are some of the best boots that are currently on the market. Starting off with their flagship speed boot, the Furon V7 Pro. So this boot is actually lighter than the Puma Ultra Ultimate. It's the lightest boot on this list, but if you were just handling it, you wouldn't necessarily think that it feels cheap or too thin, or that feels like it would break apart if you got stepped on. It's very well made, and I think it's actually more well made than some of the boots that cost $50 to $60 more on this list. Not only that, but it's extremely comfortable. There's no pressure points throughout the midfoot or the toe box. It's pretty wide fitting, and if you have really wide feet, New Balance also offers a wide footed variation for all 3 of these boots. So whether you get the Furon or the 442 or the Tequila, you can get them in wide variations. But the Furon, I think it's everything you would want a speed boot to be, and I think it's one of the only speed boots right now that really can go toe-to-toe with the Vapor and the Superfly. So for me, the Furon V7 Pro is going to be an S tier boot. Now moving on to the New Balance 442 V2 Pro. Pretty long name. I think that whoever came up with that name at New Balance could have done a little bit better. But this is a pretty standard leather football boot. I would say it's New Balance's answer to the Copa Mundial in a lot of sense. And, you're not going to get too many frills. I think that it's a decently fair price point. You can get it around $140, but I still think the Nike Premier 3 is slightly better value at $110. But it's a great leather football boot, and for me, it's going to be A tier. Moving on to the final football boot in our list, we have the New Balance Tequila V4 Pro. Now, this is probably my favorite laceless football boot on the market. Actually, it's definitely my favorite laceless football boot. There's just no compromises with the fit of this boot, and that's something that I think you run into a lot when trying on a laceless football boot. Sometimes it'll be too tight in one area but too loose in another, and you end up just getting a slightly worse fit than if you had the same boot but with laces. But with the Tequila, it just feels like you're putting on a sock when you try these boots on. They feel so comfortable all throughout the midfoot and throughout the toe box. You still get a decent amount of lockdown. The elasticated collar is really comfortable and keeps your foot in place. And the material on these boots, it's called a hypo knit upper. It almost feels like a kind of synthetic leather, but it's really high quality. It feels soft to the touch. And in my opinion, this boot just has to be S tier. So that is the final boot in our tier list. Let me know what you think. If you completely disagree, you can let me know of that as well. Let me know which boot you would have put where and which one is your favorite. Thanks again for watching. Like if you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next video.